Are the president's kids more important than yours? Then why is he skeptical about putting armed security in our schools when his kids are protected by armed guards at their school? Mr. Obama demands the wealthy pay their fair share of taxes, but he's just another elitist hypocrite when it comes to a fair share of security. Protection for their kids and gun-free zones for ours.
That ad was put out today, obviously, from the National Rifle Association, and you get where it's going. It had a limited buy on a cable network, but their plan, and they succeeded, was they get all free media here when people like us are going to play the ad and then talk about it. Dominic, it turns out I'm getting more and more surprised every day about lines that you do and don't cross, but that one, for me, I did a double take. I see it a second time here. Really?
It's so unfair. It really is so unfair, and it's hitting below the belt. What American president doesn't have Secret Service protection for their children? There's a reason why we have protection for the children of American presidents, so that if you can't blackmail them. I mean, it's just outrageous, and it shows how far the NRA is willing to go. But what you can't change are those 20 children that were killed in Newtown.
Please
you can't get away from
that spot was, I mean, did you cringe a little bit when you saw it?
Well, of course you have to cringe a little bit when you see it. But you have to remember the purpose of the ad is to get the attention that they need for their argument.
And I hear that, and they succeeded in getting exactly what they went out to, but to what end? Because everybody says that has a pulse, wait a minute, Secret Service, they watched the Bush kids, they watched the Reagan kids, they watched everybody's kids. Who thinks it's a good idea to let the president's kids go unwatched? I mean, just if you care about the country, like Dominic says, God forbid somebody kidnapped the president's kids in the national security of the country. I mean,
and I don't think the NRA is trying to make the point that the president's children don't deserve the protection. It's just I think the point they're trying to make is that any citizen deserves similar protection. And one of the the president did say,
you know what? I like you. Stop digging. All right, now
but the president did use it as an argument.
I think the ad is brilliant.
The president did use it as an argument.
I think it's a brilliant ad by the NRA for
two reasons. You think the American public is dumber than I think?
No, for two reasons. One, it gets people talking about the NRA and not about the gun control legislation that's currently before them. That's a distraction, and that helps the NRA with their overall theme. Second of all, if you get into the body of the ad, you start debating about having armed guards in schools, again, as opposed to an assault weapons ban.
Here's my thing. I don't think people of sound mind thinks that the president doesn't care about America's children. And they think, I don't care. I didn't like it when people went after the Bush kids. I found that was a cheap shot. You don't go after the children of elected officials. They didn't ask for this. They were brought into this. And I think more people feel the way I do about this, that instinctively, as soon as I heard then the NRA talking about his two daughters, I said, what the? Fill in the blank here. All right, now, just who are the people behind the NRA, which is without question the most powerful gun lobby in this country, and exactly what is their motivation? Now you say, well, obvious answer, maybe not so much. Now, most gun enthusiasts think it's just to protect a group to protect the right to bear arms. They're the biggest champion for the Second Amendment. But there are new reports out that have many people doing a double take. And Andrew, talk about who we're really talking about here and why members of the NRA may want to reconsider who their mouthpiece is.
Well, this is stuff that the NRA tries to keep fairly secret. And Mother Jones Magazine, the same group that found the 47% tape with Mitt Romney, looked into who exactly is in some of the NRA's leadership positions. And it's not just for people fighting for the Second Amendment. There are other factors at play here as well. For instance, there's a guy named George Kalides on the NRA's nominating committee. They help pick the group's board members. His interest, he's the CEO of the company that makes Bushmaster rifles, the same weapons used in the Newtown massacre and on the attack on firefighters in Webster, New York. Then there's Patricia Clark. She's also on the nominating committee. She might have a hard time defending the NRA in her hometown. She lives in Newtown, Connecticut. Ronnie Barrett invented the 50 caliber sniper rifle. That's a semi-automatic weapon that can pierce armor like the kind used by cops from 0.8 of a mile away. That weapon is legal in 49 states, and it'll stay that way if the NRA succeeds in their lobbying efforts. Also on the NRA board of directors, singer-turned-conservative activist Ted Nugent, who has contributed comments like this one to our political dialogue.
And if you want more of those kinds of evil, anti-American people in the Supreme Court, then don't get involved and let Obama take office again. Because I tell you this right now, if Barack Obama becomes the president in November again, I will either be dead or in jail by this time next year. Why are you laughing? You think that's funny? That's not funny at all. I'm serious as a heart attack.
Maybe it's a little funny. Just some of the top people at the NRA who are still being held up as the people the White House is going to have to do business with to get through any form of gun control. Yet a lot of NRA positions aren't as popular as you might think, according to new polls. The majority of Americans now say they'd support a ban on semi-automatic handguns, as well as a ban on high-capacity ammo magazines, an assault weapons ban. Nearly 9 in 10 Americans would support a background check law. The NRA doesn't. 7 in 10 disagree with the NRA on a database for gun sales. And while the NRA opposes background checks on ammunition sales, 3/4 of Americans now support one, and reach most of those issues in the president's proposal today.
You know, when we talk, I think sometimes we make the mistake here. When we feel the need, well, there's always got to be a balance, that one side and the other, that somehow all arguments are equal. Forget about who's even on the board. And I think it's important that people know some of the economic interests of people who are making some of the decisions for policy there. And forget about LaPierre's, I thought, most tone-deaf press conference that he did a week after it. I want anybody, and I don't think anybody at this table is going to do it, but somebody to explain to me, if I can remind our audience about an app that the NRA put out. And again, let me explain what this app is. This is designed for children, again, this is on their website, 4 years and up. An app that they were selling, that the NRA got behind, that has on it an M16 gun that targets, if you look carefully, target practice shaped as coffins. I want to understand how an organization post-Newtown could come up with the idea, then create the app, and then decide to go ahead and market it. And anybody saw the Daily News yesterday knows the story I'm talking about. And then target it for children 4 years and up. Let's make an M16, and now let's have a target of a coffin, exactly the same color, shape, and size that 20 little children were carried and buried underground in. How does a mind work that way? And I'm not going to have poor Vince here have to explain that, but that is what I believe at the end of the day, Ryan, is the choice. People are going to have to make a choice. Who are they willing to do? Even if it's a little uncomfortable with them, even if they're going against what normally would be their instincts, they have to make a choice. And that goes for lawmakers and it goes for the general public. I don't think, and I disagree with Andrew, I don't think this ad was brilliant that they did going against this. I think the polls are starting to show, because they're going in one way, the public has said, I'm not going to give them the benefit of the doubt anymore. These guys don't talk for me.
I mean, Ted Nugent, is the intellectual leader of the conservative movement, so he speaks for a lot of people. But what really strikes me is the irony that you've got out of one side of their mouth, they're blaming video games for the violence, and then on the same week they release a video game that you go around shooting coffins. I mean, it's completely nonsensical, and this is sort of things the NRA does.
But it's offensive. And Dominic, I want you to take a listen to who's the most powerful conservative voice in this country?
Honestly, Rush Limbaugh.
Okay. You guessed correct, thank God, because if I set this thing up and you knocked it the other way, I'd look bad right now. But yes, it is, in fact, Rush Limbaugh. And to the ditto heads out there, you know where I'm going to go here. On his radio program, he articulated what he thinks about the president and children and the challenges for the Republican Party with the legislative battle that lies ahead. But I want you to listen to Rush Limbaugh. And again, the most powerful voice, Dominic's right here because he agreed with me, but the most powerful voice in the conservative movement, and obviously the most powerful lobbying group, the NRA, what they've done. And consider who the mouthpieces are that are standing in the way of this legislation. Take a listen to Mr. Limbaugh.
Obama uses kids as human shields. He brings these kids, supposedly who wrote letters to the White House after Newtown. It's going to be very difficult to oppose it. You got these little kids there, they don't want to die. And how can you not listen to them? You've got to do something. That's the picture.
I can't give you my honest response because it would be a personal attack on Mr. Limbaugh and some of the past problems that he's had.
He's off his medications again
Right,
or whatever.
right.
He's
So
back on.
I'm not going to go there. I'm not going to go there. I'm going to leave that one alone.
If a Republican believes in their core that the Second Amendment rights are there's a different line than the president does. Okay. But where is the condemnation when a guy does a mocking voice of a little child who doesn't want to die after Newtown? Where is somebody calling out the NRA to say, listen, I believe in the right to bear arms and I disagree with the president, but I don't believe when the NRA is putting out an app about shooting caskets? Where the heck is the party's outrage for that? Because there are good and decent Republicans who you can have an argument, but I haven't heard anybody condemn the group or that piece of you-know-what for what he did.
Well, first of all, I don't think you're going to, really don't believe you're going to hear anybody come out and condemn Rush Limbaugh, because I don't think anybody, even on the conservative side, is going to take him and his comments that seriously. As a conservative Republican, I don't. I think he's an entertainer. That's what he does. He uses the conservative platform to do just that. And this is where I think this entire discussion on the Second Amendment and what's happening right now needs to become just that. We've already said tonight how it's going to be a fight, the president, how he's going to bring the fight. Let's move from a fight. Let's move from making this about the two extremes on both sides, the extreme right, the extreme left, everybody yelling at each other. Let's have a serious discussion. Let's have a serious discussion on making this country safer, better understanding what the Second Amendment actually allows. And not only that, but some of the pieces that we're actually discussing already. Can everyone here tell me exactly what an assault weapon is?
No.
Do you know what a semi-automatic rifle is? What that means? And I'm saying, and not to point out everybody here, but you're the ones in the room. We don't know the definitions of those things. People don't fully understand what all that means, and yet we're yelling at each other from both sides toward the middle.
Should the NRA be a part of that serious conversation, or have they sort of lost the right to sit at that table?
I'm not going to say they've lost the right to sit at that table, because
but they're not an actor in good faith if you're looking for good faith negotiations.
But here's Vince, and to Andrew's point.
Yeah.
Okay, we can disagree about with modifications. What can you do? Okay.
Right.
But I didn't hear anybody say on the right, you know what? Yeah, we should prohibit the sale of armor-piercing bullets. We should prohibit the sale here of body armor for the general public. We should mandate that we have databases that everybody's got to go into when they want to buy a gun. We should do background checks on people. If we believe as a party and as a country that you can't get, if you're on the no-fly list, you can't get on a plane, why should you on the no-fly list be able to buy a gun? But I don't hear a peep out of that. So while you're saying we should get it out of the politics, the only way this will get done is if there's political consequences for one side or the other at the end of the day to vote one way or the other. And that's a sad testament to America, but nobody's going to disagree that's how this is going to come down to. Because there's nobody moving even a little bit to meet the president a quarter of the way.
Well, I'm not saying no one's moving, but I don't think it was from the president. I mean, the president basically outlined executive orders today. He didn't reach across the aisle. He didn't do, and none of that has been done yet by the president. Just saying, this is what I want. There has been no talk or any discussion, at least publicly, about what are we going to do. And I actually like the fact that, the Republicans didn't come out today and necessarily attack anything that he did.
I mean,
some did.
I have a whole bunch of folks who said,
you know who's meeting the White House halfway? The American people. Public opinion is changing. That's how you defeat the NRA or obstinate
and that's why I think the best, smartest politics they could do is get ahead of this, pick some stuff that they're for. It's just going to be like, for another night, we'll talk about immigration reform. The Republicans should be in front of the Democrats on this one. But they're going to be dragged kicking and screaming, just like gay marriage and all these other things that you know where this is going to end. All right, we jump to a break. When we come back, I'm going to ask these guys about how this plan gets sold. And I'll ask Ryan here how, not just the message, but who the messengers ought to be. Strategy session up next after this.